Remember Johnny Manziel?
Johnny football.
Yeah, Johnny Football.
Yeah.
He was a supernova and then kind of vanished.
Right.
Today we're going to do a deep dive into his story.
Right.
What made him so captivating and what ultimately led to his downfall. We've got a whole stack of articles and interviews here.
Okay.
And our mission is to try and understand what his rise and fall tell us about talent and fame and the price of freedom.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
You might even find yourself rethinking what success really means.
Absolutely.
So what I think is so fascinating about this is that Manziel's story isn't just about one guy, right?
Right.
It kind of intersects with these larger cultural shifts.
Totally.
So as we're going through this material,
Okay.
I want you to think about what his rise and fall might reveal about like our evolving views on success, rebellion, and even masculinity.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
So to understand Johnny Manziel,
Right.
you have to understand Texas high school football.
Texas high school football.
It is a religion there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Manziel, coming out of Kerrville, was like a mythical figure.
Okay.
He wasn't just good. He was electrifying.
Yeah.
One article described him as running, jumping, escaping tackles, throwing. He could do anything but fly.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
given how obsessed Texas is with football,
Right.
how do you think that level of hype
Yeah.
shaped him at such a young age?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like
Yeah.
he was being groomed for greatness from the very beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Like
that
this.
kind of pressure,
Sure.
that expectation to be extraordinary, I mean, can be a double-edged sword,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And then he goes to Texas A&M,
Texas A&M,
wins the Heisman Trophy as a freshman.
and as a freshman.
I mean, do you know how rare that is?
I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
It's like winning an Oscar for your first movie role.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Ah.
it's not just talent. It's like a cultural moment.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
everyone's talking about Johnny football,
Daddy, no football.
magazine covers, ESPN,
Yeah.
you name it.
And that's kind of where the whirlwind starts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The endorsements, the parties, the celebrity appearances,
Right.
all this while he's still basically a kid.
Oh, yeah.
There's this detail in one of the articles that really stood out to me
Okay.
about him making vast sums of money selling autographs,
Oh, wow.
which suggests that even before the NFL,
Yeah.
there was this intense pressure to capitalize on his fame,
Right.
and maybe even at the expense of his development as a player. You mentioned the crowd that appears at the top,
Yeah.
but wasn't there also a sense that he was actively seeking out that attention?
Oh, yeah, I think so for sure.
That he thrived on the chaos?
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
a certain charisma, a rebellious energy that drew people to him.
Right.
And it wasn't just fans. It was brands,
Right.
celebrities. Everyone wanted a piece of Johnny football.
It's football.
The pressure that comes with that level of fame,
Right.
the constant scrutiny can be incredibly isolating.
Yeah, it can be really tough.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the NFL,
The NFL.
drafted by the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, yeah.
Huge expectations.
Big time.
So,
Yeah.
given the whirlwind of college,
Okay.
how do you think he was prepared for the intense pressure cooker of the NFL?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
Could anyone be prepared for that? You know what I mean? That level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
The NFL's a different beast.
Yeah.
It's a business.
It is business.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Manziel's style of play, his improvisational skills, which were so celebrated in college,
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily translate to the NFL's more structured environment.
Yeah, and it all falls apart pretty quickly, right? Less
Yeah.
than 2 seasons.
Right.
He's out. Yeah. Why do you think he couldn't make it work in the NFL?
Was it the pressure?
It's probably a combination of factors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the pressure of living up to the hype,
Yeah.
the constant media attention,
Right.
the demands of a professional schedule,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Physically.
there's the question of whether Manziel's freewheeling style,
Right.
which made him so exciting to watch in college,
Right.
you know, could be adapted to the NFL's more rigid system.
Right. And after the NFL, it's like
Yeah.
everything just unraveled.
It really did.
The Canadian Football League, a ban, even a suicide attempt.
Wow. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking to see how quickly things spiraled downward.
It was incredibly swift.
Yeah.
And very public, you know.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of the dark side of fame
Yeah.
and the pressures that come with it.
The article mentions that his father blamed college for not making a man of him.
Right.
And
I think it's more complex than that.
Yeah.
I think it's the system.
The pressure, the culture that surrounds these young athletes.
Yeah, it's like they're almost set up to fail,
Right.
given all this freedom, all this adulation, but not the tools to handle it.
Totally.
And then when they inevitably stumble, they're cast aside.
Yeah, exactly.
The article makes this interesting comparison between Manziel
Okay.
and figures like Eminem
Okay.
and Allen Iverson,
Interesting.
the bad boys of like previous eras.
Right. Okay.
Back then, their rebelliousness was almost celebrated.
Hmm.
But today,
Yeah.
it seems like there's less tolerance for that kind of figure.
Yeah, I think so.
So why do you think that is?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah,
It speaks to like a shift in our cultural values, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah, maybe we've just become more risk-averse as a society.
Yeah.
Less tolerant of those who defy expectations.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just drawn to different kinds of heroes now.
Right.
You
I
know?
wonder if social media plays a role in this.
Like for sure.
You know, everything is so amplified now.
Right.
Every misstep is documented.
Yeah.
Dissected.
Absolutely.
There's like no room for error anymore.
Yeah.
No space for redemption.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile this idea of the rebellious, rule-breaking figure
Right.
with our current cultural climate?
Yeah.
Is there still room for the bad boy in today's world?
You know?
You know,
That's a question that Manziel himself seems to be wrestling with. He's
Yeah.
30 now,
30 years old.
making a documentary about his life.
Yeah. What's striking is the change in him.
It is.
Yeah.
The article describes him as seeming normal now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he's shed that bad boy persona
Right.
and embraced a new kind of authenticity.
That's interesting.
It's almost like he's trying to understand himself in the context of these broader cultural shifts.
Exactly. And in
Yeah.
doing so, he might be helping us understand them too.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's interesting how he's gone from this like larger than life persona to
Right.
someone who seems more grounded, more
So-
reflective.
Who reflective, yeah.
It makes you wonder if that's the price of redemption these days.
Right. Do you have to like dial down your personality, your individuality to be accepted back into the fold?
It's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
You know, the article even points out this contrast between like Eminem,
Eminem.
who was once seen as this like ultimate rebel,
Yeah.
right? And now he's sending like moralistic cease and desist letters.
Really? Wow.
Just a complete 180.
Yeah, and then you have Allen Iverson, the bad boy of basketball in the 90s,
Right.
who's now contrasted with like a Steph Curry,
Yeah.
who's seen as this wholesome, family-friendly figure.
Right. It
So-
really makes you think about what we value as a society. You
Yeah.
know, maybe we're less tolerant of rule breakers.
Right.
Or maybe we're just drawn to different kinds of heroes now.
Different kind of heroes.
Yeah.
It feels like there's this pressure to conform to a certain mold.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you have to be successful, but you also have to be likable,
Right.
relatable,
Right.
squeaky clean.
Yeah, there's no room for rough edges anymore.
Yeah.
It's like we're sanitizing our hero.
Sanitizing our heroes.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to Manziel's struggles with addiction.
Right.
His suicide attempt.
Yeah.
You know, they're a tragic reminder
Yeah.
of the human cost of this pressure cooker environment.
Absolutely.
You know?
Behind the headlines and
Right.
the highlight reels, there's a real person struggling with very real demons.
Right.
And sometimes those struggles get amplified by the spotlight.
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
a cautionary tale, but also a story of resilience.
Totally.
The fact that Manziel is still here,
Right.
still trying to make sense of it all, is remarkable.
Absolutely. And it speaks to like
Yeah,
the human spirit's capacity for growth and change.
it really does.
Yeah.
He's confronting his demons,
He is.
trying to rebuild his life.
That's right.
It's a challenge to all of us
Yeah.
to reevaluate our expectations,
Totally.
to offer support instead of judgment.
Absolutely.
So for someone who maybe isn't familiar with Manziel's story, why should they care?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think Manziel's story, even with all its complexities
Yeah.
and contradictions, is ultimately about finding your way
Right.
in a world that's constantly shifting its expectations.
Right.
It's about the struggle to reconcile success with authenticity
Yeah.
and the importance of finding your own definition of what it means to be a man.
In today's world,
Yeah, we all face those pressures.
Manziel's story forces us to ask some tough questions.
It does.
What does it mean to be successful?
Right.
What price are we willing to pay for fame?
Yeah. And how do we navigate the pressures of a culture that often seems to reward conformity over individuality?
Exactly. It's not just about sports or celebrity.
Right.
It's about the human condition.
It is.
We all face these pressures in different ways.
And Manziel's journey, his willingness to confront his demons
Right.
and try to make sense of it all, offers a glimmer of hope for us all.
Right. He seems to have found some peace
Yeah.
in this new chapter of his life.
It seems so. It
Yeah.
really makes you think about what success really means.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it
Woo!
is it fame, fortune, trophies,
Right.
or it's something more internal,
Yeah.
more about personal growth and self-acceptance?
Exactly.
Manziel's story seems to suggest it's the latter.
I think so.
One of the articles we read
Yeah.
talks about how he found success at football,
Okay.
but not manhood.
Right.
There's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the real tragedy of his story,
Yeah.
that he achieved these external markers of success,
Right.
but at what cost?
He lost himself along the way.
Right. And the article quotes his father blaming college for not making a man of him.
Right. But in reality, it's more complex than that.
Yeah.
It's the system.
Right, pressure. The pressure.
The culture that surrounds these young athletes.
Yeah. It's like they're set up to fail,
Right.
given all this freedom, all this adulation, but not the tools to handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they inevitably stumble, they're cast aside.
Which is why Manziel's current path is so intriguing.
Yeah.
He's confronting his demons,
Yeah.
trying to rebuild his life.
Mm.
It's not just a story of redemption, but also a challenge to us
Right.
to reevaluate our expectations of young men,
Yeah.
to offer support instead of judgment.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about what we as a society truly value.
Yeah.
Are we setting these young men up for success,
Mm.
or are we setting them up for a fall?
It's like we're fascinated by the flame, but we don't want to think about the fuel that feeds it.
Right.
Or the potential for it to burn out of control.
And Manziel's story really highlights the human cost of that disconnect.
It does.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that success isn't always what it seems.
Right.
And that true freedom might lie in embracing our imperfections.
And in finding the courage to redefine what it means to be a man in today's world.
Exactly. If Manziel can find peace and purpose,
Right.
after all he's been through, it offers a glimmer of hope for us all.
It reminds us that it's never too late to change, to learn, to grow.
And that the most valuable victories are often the ones we win over ourselves.
So after diving into all of this, what stands out to you the most about Manziel's story?
For me, it's a reminder that we need to be more compassionate. Not just towards others, but towards ourselves.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes.
We do.
We all stumble, and we all deserve a chance to get back up.
I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, Manziel's story can help us all redefine what it means to truly win in life.
Maybe winning isn't about the trophies or the accolades.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about finding peace, purpose, and a sense of self-worth that can't be taken away by external forces.
Well, after unpacking all of this, I'm left wondering, is it even possible to achieve that level of fame and success without losing yourself in the process?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while.
Me too.
And for you listening, I hope this deep dive gave you a lot to think about too.